Hi, it's Emily, Miss Turk, and I'm here to show you a little bit about our math that we use every day in second grade. First, I want to start with talking about how we compose and decompose numbers. For us, it's going to make a lot of sense as adults, but for kids, it's actually a very basic but hard way to think about numbers and think about math. So the first thing I want to show you is how we make these numbers together. So let's take, for example, the number 5, okay? So we've got a big 5 here. And there's different ways to make 5. For us, it's those fast facts like 0 plus 5 equals 5, 1 plus 4, 2 plus 3, and then we switch them and we invert them. That's that commutative property. But for kids, we have to explicitly teach like you can switch it around and you still will equal 5. And so it makes like a nice little pattern for them, but it's one of those things that, again, we explicitly want to teach them that these are all the combinations and all the ways to make 5. And in order to do that in a different visual way, because we're trying to represent it a different way, we're trying to show them maybe they think a different way, is we can do something called a number bond or a number tree. And that's where we have the whole up top. So this is the whole. And then we're looking for different parts, okay? So then the parts go near the bottom or off to this side. So we are kind of showing them that there's, two things that go together because it just helps keep those steps down for those children. So one of the parts could be 0 and one of the parts could be 5. And that could be one way that we represent 5. And then we're able to make that into an equation. Or we can show that there's one part and then there's 4 parts and that makes 5 as a whole. One of the things that we start with, though, is drawing dots in there to see. So, for example, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. So we can have 3 dots here and 2 dots here, or we can have 2 dots here and 3 dots here. We can kind of keep changing it around if you want to show different representations of the number. So that's kind of how we get a visual representation of a number, and we do our drawings like this. They can use dots, they can use cubes, but this is the very first basic thing that we sort of teach them, is that really quick fluency in the sense that there's 2 parts that make up a whole number. When students have their whole number, we practice this a lot with the smaller numbers that are within 10 because then we teach them to also use their fingers. There is nothing wrong with using the fingers because it is a really good way for kinesthetic learners who need that movement in order to manipulate the number just so that they can better understand it. And it's a good visual representation for those kids that need that quick check for them to look at their hands and then be able to do their work. So for example, if I have the number 5 like I wrote on the board, we know that there's different parts. There's a part of 3, there's a part of 2, and I can't separate my hands as cool as I used to, but there's a part of 3, there's a part of 2. Then, there's a part of 1 and there's a part of 4. And it's supposed to be a quick, easy way to sort of subitize, which that is what we call, being able to look at a number without having to count it out. And so it's a quick, easy way for kids to look, group the numbers, the dots, the cubes together, and know that that's what that number is. So we practice it a lot with our fingers. For example, we say if we have a part of 5 and a part of 3, how much is that? And they say, 8, because it's a part of 3, it's a part of 5, part of 3. The other thing that we can do with our fingers, and I'll get more into this when we go into our addition strategies, is we can look at a number like 8 and we know that this can be an equation, 5 plus 3, or 5 counting on 3. We start with 5 and then we keep going, 6, 7, 8, and then you've got your number. Or if you want to subtract, if you're doing the parts of the numbers and you want to take away and see the different parts, you could say something like 8, you take away 3, what's left, and then it's 5. So kids can do that, or they can count backwards, 7, 6, 5, and then you're left with 5. So that's kind of nice. So different ways to manipulate the number is really what we're trying to get with that very basic foundational skills. Subitizing, being able to look at a number, know the different parts, and even know that number by itself because of the smaller parts that are within it. So that's how we utilize that skill, and that's a very base that those kids need in order to understand numbers and be able to move on.